How are you guys? How are you guys? Yeah, we had some technical issue, as always, All right. Yeah, I'm glad that you guys are here. This is like the last session of the day, and I know I'm the only thing between you and the reception, But we're going to keep it super excited because this is almost like the coolest technology. It's MarkLogic, it's Kubernetes, and it's containers, Like, I'm very excited to share our learnings with you, as well as I want to learn something from you, So, okay, I want to see a show of hands, like how many of you guys actually use containers in your development testing? Oh, wow, quite a few, like half of the room. And any of you guys are deploying like containers in production environment? Okay, awesome. Well, what's your name, gentlemen? Sershka? Okay, I'm going to talk to you afterwards because I want to learn something from you too. And there's.
I had to keep the footprint small because the limitation of the memory.
Oh wow. Okay. Awesome. We can have more conversations. Okay, that's awesome to know. I'll learn something from you after the talk. All right. My name is Emma Liu. I'm a product manager at MarkLogic. And I work on manageability and infrastructure features. Specifically, I work on how to deploy MarkLogic in cloud platforms such as AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, Oracle Bare Metal Cloud, as well as how we containerize MarkLogic. So this is my co-presenter.
Hi, my name is Vitaly Korlev. I'm a staff QA engineer at MarkLogic, and I test all the things that Emma listed.
Yes. Yeah, we're good working buddy. Yeah. All right. Have you guys seen this cartoon before? If not, I believe some of you is probably seen the hype curve, right? So is container really a hype? Just like everything else, like cryptocurrency, those words, keywords floating in the air right now. Cryptocurrency, blockchain. Well, from my perspective, whether we call something a hype or not, I really see whether it brings benefits to the users and to our customers. When I'm talking to our customers and our developers from organizations, I see a lot of people are leveraging container technology, in their developing and testing. And there's a lot of benefits that they tell me, okay, it's really cool. Containers is really cool. It's not just cool. There's not just the cool factor, but it actually works. And it's really fast. It's very portable. It's very lightweight. I hear all those things. So because of that, I actually don't think it's a hype. It is a real thing. At least, my dad has not started talking about containers yet. And one of the big benefits that I see that containers brings to MarkLogic is, okay, you've heard of the cloud agnostic. And we're cloud agnostic. And what I see that container is really bringing one more level up, that it is enable a platform agnostic solution. You can write MarkLogic applications once and run it anywhere, be it on premises or on the cloud. You can lift and shift into the cloud, whether it's a private cloud, a public cloud, a hybrid cloud, or AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, all those things. So it is very flexible. So some of you might be new to Docker and containers. So Docker is actually one flavor of containers, and it's very popular. So I might use Docker and container kind of interchangeably in this presentation. When we're talking about containers in MarkLogic context, we're talking about building the container, a Docker image, building MarkLogic in a Docker container. So this is a quote from the Docker website. A container image is a lightweight, standalone executable package of a piece of software that includes everything needed to run it. The code, the runtime, the system tools and system libraries, and settings. And the container is really on your local laptop is a runtime instance of this image. And a lot of times, people compare containers versus virtual machines. So what we see is containers is really an OS-level virtualization versus virtual machine is hardware-level virtualization. In containers, you separate achieved the separation by resource control group and user namespace, and it really shared the same kernel. And then the second, containers, Docker engine really executes the containers in your machine, versus virtual machine, it needs to have a guest operating system and a hypervisor which virtualizes hardware. And I also hear this analogy, like apartment versus house analogy. I believe it's from Michael Cohen at the DockerCon. And he brought it up that, okay, containers is like apartments. And virtual machines like house, because in a house, you have definitely a room, a kitchen, living room, a kitchen, a bathroom, that's minimum. And you have a shared, heating system and electrical system. Whereas the containers in apartment setting, it's really shared, the electrical system and the heating system. It's shared throughout the building. But inside a apartment, it also has kitchen and living room. So it's like the container in a machine. So we have a side-by-side comparison here. And from bottom, you can see that it's both server and then the host operating system. And then you see the difference. In a virtual machine, there's the hypervisor, and there's a guest operating system in each VM. And in the Docker, there's a Docker engine, and then MarkLogic, together with the bins and libraries, are packaged as a container there. It's very lightweight, and you can see the difference. Oh, there's no guest operating system there. All right, we're going to reception later, right? And now that you have some basic knowledge about containers and what's the difference between containers and virtual machines, we have a topic to talk about. So yeah, hopefully the quick intro will give you enough information. So why MarkLogic in containers? Any takers? Just a guess. That's a good, yeah. And
you're able to start the same thing as VM. You're able to start smaller instance, and from experiments, the container is way more efficient than the VMware.
Yeah, that sounds yeah, very, very good. And that. Oh, okay. So this gentleman says it is very efficient. Containers. It's similar to VM, but it's also very efficient. Yeah. And what?
I was going to say that it's much more suited to use containers for extreme short-term temporary use, where you need to spool it up and then spool it down within a matter of minutes, not seconds.
Yes. So this gentleman is saying that it is very fast to start up and shut down. It's very fast and enables the rapid software development. And you guys actually hit all the benefits I'm going to talk about. That's great. And there's just 3 huge benefits that I see that why MarkLogic is thinking about containerizing it. First one is it's portable, it's simple, and it's very fast. Portability. Containers really enables that you can share MarkLogic images among your users, different users in your organizations, and across platforms. We already mentioned earlier that it is platform agnostic. And the simplicity, it is lightweight, and it's very quick to start up and shut down. It's very good for your own development environment. And the speed, enables the rapid software development process, and it integrates with the CI/CD process smoothly. I want to talk about the history of MarkLogic in containers. So starting in MarkLogic 8, we started to see that our developers and QA using containers in their environments, as well as some of our customers. That's September 2015. Then we had some community update from our MLU folks, putting the building MarkLogic Docker image on our developer.marklogic.com, which helps a lot more customers to start using containers in their environment. Within MarkLogic, at the end of 2016, we started the private registry, actually enabled us to really develop fast for MarkLogic server development, as well as some of the applications. We'll also share this among our field folks so they can demo MarkLogic quickly in your environment, in your customer site. And last year, when we first announced MarkLogic 9, we started announcing that we support containers in development QA environment. So what is new in 9.05? We just released the MarkLogic 9.05 last week. It's fresh out of door. We're announcing that MarkLogic supports containers in production environment. What we did is we did extensive regression testing based on the Red Hat 7.4 base OS and the overlay FS within the container and NFS mount outside of the containers. And we also did performance testing, comparing MarkLogic performance running in containers versus running in virtual machines. And we don't see much difference there. So that's a good news for everyone. I have to point out that one thing that we're piggybacking and waiting until some endorsed operating system is Red Hat 7.4 really enhanced some of their features around container support in production. And they are going the enterprise grade and production ready for the container in production. So we are more like piggybacking on their guarantee and did a lot of testing around it. So this is our endorsed base operating system. We talked quite a bit about what are containers and what are benefits. I also want to talk about some examples that MarkLogic is very unique in that you can leverage the container technology. So a few releases ago, we introduced the workload management, the ED node separation in MarkLogic. And this is actually a proven architecture in the VM paradigm. What is a MarkLogic ED node is, in a MarkLogic cluster, you can actually separate each node into a E node, which is an evaluator node, or a D node, which is a data manager node. So the E node will listen on the socket and parse requests and generate responses, whereas the D nodes will host your data as well as its indices, and it will supply the data that responds to the E node requests. And with containers, you can see that here, these are containerized E nodes. And you can have two different containerized E node groups, and one group for a D node containerized D node group. And what it brings for you is each of the E group can serve some of your services. For example, you might leverage a few containers in an E group that works on your, say, business analytics application, and another E group that works on your semantics-related application, which requires a lot more computation power. So this is a conceptual framework that we're thinking containers is very good at to manage the ED node separation. Another example, you can develop via containers. So you've been hearing about MarkLogic Data Hub framework. So we prioritized this Data Hub framework in MarkLogic 9. It really helps enterprises to harmonize the data and govern the data flow. And one thing we noticed that in a virtual machine environment, you do need to install a few libraries and system requirements there. And one of the customers actually told us that within their organization, for their developers, it's not that easy to get public Wi-Fi access. So in that case, you can leverage the private registry and actually package the Data Hub framework and allow your users in your organization to pull and develop right on top. It's very fast, and you can package the Java 8, the Gradle, and MLCP there. By the way, we have other presentation around Data Hub framework and as well as the workshop, so you guys can go check it out. There's more detailed explanation about what is a Data Hub in those materials. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper on the technical aspect, and how to set up MarkLogic Docker in your own laptop. just 3 easy steps, okay? It's not that hard. You get a Docker file, and in this case, it will be a Red Hat 7.4. And then you specify the dependencies and expose the ports for MarkLogic. And then you use the Docker build command to make the MarkLogic image. That you have a Docker MarkLogic image on your local machine. When you want to use it, you use Docker run to have this instantiate this Docker runtime container. It's very easy, but you cannot really share, right? So the second approach is share and deploy via registry. It could be a private or a public registry. Currently, MarkLogic does not have a public registry presence yet, but we're looking into that. So what you do is, first you create this image, and you push to your private registry. And then when you want to use it, either in your local development machine, you can pull it from your own private registry, or you push it to your CI/CD process servers, or your production servers. So it's very, very quick. All right, now I'm going to switch to the other machine and show a very quick demo how MarkLogic leverages the private registry to do our own development. Okay.
Registry.
Yes, let's go switch to this other machine. All right, so this is our MarkLogic internal Docker registry. This is a UI for it. And you can see that we organize everything in different directories, and those are the nightlies that we're using and different versions. And then today I'm going to show pulling actually the ops director image from our private registry and set it up to monitor a 3-node MarkLogic cluster. So I have to explain ops director is another feature in MarkLogic 9. It's an enterprise monitoring tool, and it's actually built on top of MarkLogic. It's an application built on top of MarkLogic, and it can monitor MarkLogic clusters. So here, this is the Docker compose the YAML file that our internal team set up. So I have to copy this to my own directory. And then I will instantiate 4 containers using Docker Compose. So here is the Docker Swarm as orchestration. And then we initialize the ops director manager. So this is the container that holds the ops director application where there's also MarkLogic on top. And then you install the ops director, and then you create the 3-node MarkLogic cluster that we're going to monitor. And then we manage the 3-node cluster using the ops director. Let me switch to my comment. All right. So this is a process that we're pulling from MarkLogic private registry. It might take a few seconds. You can see that we're downloading different files that are needed. Yeah, since ops director is the application on top, so it takes extra layers. All right. I think there's some technical. Okay. And then here we start the Docker Compose, creating network, and then initiate ops director node. It might take a few seconds. Initialization complete. And then we do the ops director installation. It's installed successfully. And then we install the MarkLogic cluster, which is being monitored. And then we join the cluster with the second node of MarkLogic. And then we do the third node. Now we manage MarkLogic cluster with ops director. All right, let's go to the UI and go to the panel for ops director. So it is up and running. Again. So now you can see we have 3 hosts in this cluster. There are 2 clusters because the ops director cluster is actually monitoring itself as well. All right, this is my part of the demo. Let me go back to the presentation. I hope you liked the demo. Thank you. We need some more energy for the last session. Okay. Now I'm going to switch gear a little bit, talking about MarkLogic in Kubernetes. So why Kubernetes, right? So Kubernetes, it is an orchestration tool for framework for containers. It's just like VM in a production environment. You really need an orchestration framework to manage and do the backup and do the monitoring and do all kinds of rollouts, roll back, and all those things. It's very necessary, right? So containers cannot just run in production by itself. It does need some sort of orchestration tool to help it. And why we're talking about Kubernetes, it is really the leading orchestration framework now for containers. And it's kind of won a war for orchestration tools. Now that we see that a lot major cloud platforms all support Kubernetes with the recent addition of AWS adding the EKS, which is the managed Kubernetes services, because everyone thinks that Kubernetes is the production-ready, great container orchestration tool. Quickly, what are the Kubernetes features? It handles the automatic bin packing and handles the scalability and high availability. Also handles rollouts and rollbacks automatically. Of course, it also orchestrates the storage. A quick diagram for the Kubernetes architecture. So Kubernetes implements a kind of a master-slave architecture, and there's a master and talking to the different worker nodes. And MarkLogic would be sitting in the pods in those worker nodes. And Kubernetes requires an image registry so that they can pull the images that are needed to run your applications. And then there's the API that talks to the Kubernetes master, and you can build your UI and command line through that. So this is a quick introduction for Kubernetes. I'm going to hand it over to Vitaly and show you actually a quick proof of concept of MarkLogic running in Kubernetes.
Thanks, Emma. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Kubernetes is exciting and all, and I'd like to try it out, but I don't have time to necessarily maybe set up a full cluster. So perhaps as a QA or developer, I'd like to try it out on a single machine. So as a quick POC, we'll show that it can be done. Well, rather, somebody might want to do it, not necessarily for production, but if you wanted to test it out. Yeah, so we'll have it running on this particular laptop. So some of the dependencies, of course, we'll need Docker as a container provider. Private Docker registry is needed by the pods in order to pull fresh images, and that can be local or public registry. In our case, we're using private registry. VirtualBox is used to host the Minikube image, and Minikube is the tool that allows us to run Kubernetes on a single cluster. And of course, we need MarkLogic 9 to spin it up in the cluster to see that it can work. So some of the setup components, we have the MarkLogic Docker image, which Emma pulled earlier from our private registry, so we've got that. It also includes some configuration scripts that will be used once containers come up. They need to couple, they need to initialize with admin user, etc. Nginx Docker image with some config files. So I used Nginx as a load balancer and the replication controller. And there are some corresponding config files that will open up needed ports and set up load balancing. Finally, there are some Kubernetes configuration files for the MarkLogic pods, the service pod, which is the networking for MarkLogic containers, and the Nginx servers config file. Ooh. So let me switch back to the other display. OK, so first of all, I'm going to have to spin up the VM and the Minikube. That'll take a few long seconds. And then, let's see. So far, so good. Starting the cluster components. And looks like it should be up. Let's check. Looking good. OK, so next step is to spin up the servers component for MarkLogic. This should set up all the networking in Kubernetes. And that's also looking good. And then the next step is to spin up the pod configuration. OK, I see some reds. This is normal while it's launching. I just need to refresh a couple of times to see that it's coming up. And so this is the individual pods that are spinning up, containing. So in this case, I'm going to have 3 containers for the cluster. I can check the logs, make sure everything is good. All right. Looks like all 3 nodes came up. And my final setup step would be to spin up the load balancer, the Nginx. So that's going to be a separate node. So that came up. And finally, we can check that the cluster is up. And we have admin UI with 3 nodes coupled together on a laptop. And of course, as a next step, if I wanted to do some development or testing, I would load some data into the database. And I have separate volumes mounted for each container to persist the data in case I wanted to shut it down temporarily. And going back to the slides.
That's awesome. So I have to point out that actually we're using one laptop and there's 4 Docker containers for the previous demo that I was using, and then there's a Kubernetes cluster there. So there are quite a few nodes on this, and sometimes it really drives this machine crazy, you know. OK, let's get back to, let's talk about what we actually learned today. I want you to have some really easy to remember take-home message. MarkLogic in containers. First, it really enables us to be platform neutral. And you can write MarkLogic application once and deploy it everywhere in on-prem or on cloud environments. And the second part, we talked about how containers can help you to develop MarkLogic applications in your SDLC process. And you can develop, test, and deploy in production. Containers are all helping in all these steps. And the third item, we talked about Kubernetes. And MarkLogic is ecosystem compatible with proof of concept MarkLogic cluster deployment in Kubernetes. And I really enjoyed Vitaly's demo, and it is a good proof of concept that, OK, MarkLogic does run in Kubernetes. And you do need to write your own configuration files, but it is a fantastic tool that we can leverage in your production environment. So how to get it started? So there are quite a few blogs on the developer.marklogic.com. You can learn about how to build a MarkLogic Docker container, how to automate MarkLogic Docker install, as well as there's a blog about how to deploy MarkLogic cluster in Kubernetes. One thing is this blog is actually written for a MarkLogic 8, and we're thinking about updating it to MarkLogic 9 with new addition learnings that we learned. All right, now let's go to Q&A. Yay. All right. Okay, we do have.
Could you please go back to the slides with URLs because it's not opening on Google search.
Oh, okay. Sure. Yes. Let's stop at this slide. Yeah.
I just had a real kind of a basic operational question about how you might. I'm trying to understand how you would use, or what the case would be to use containers in production. Just because my understanding is that for a MarkLogic node, you would want it running on its own. You'd want to maximize the node that MarkLogic instance is running on. So, if I'm imagining multiple containers running on shared hardware, wouldn't they all be contending for the same resources? How would that work in production, I guess?
Well, I think that it's a different. So I talked about before that there's the workload management that you can do, and I think even in a VM situation, you're not supposed to kind of strain your VM having MarkLogic running there too. So we do appreciate that if you can have the separation of E node and D node, even in VM situation, that would be really good. And then containers, it really helps that you can scale a lot faster with additional containers running on top. So I hope that's answers the
Is it
question.
possible to deploy different containers to different like resource groups within like a cloud? Is that how it would be used typically? Like if I'm running out of resources and I need to deploy more nodes, I can't just deploy them to the same system that I'm in because I'm already contending for resources.
Okay. And
I can say why
yeah.
we did it.
Okay. Awesome.
So basically, you need redundancy, and you need QA. And usually it's nice to have a UAT, a QA, and maybe a staging area. Now that's a lot of hardware. Now if you ask for all these dev, QA, and things like that, your manager is going to say no. Now if you actually start spreading and every machine's production. So dev runs in production, but the container is dev. And then you tell your I don't know about Kubernetes, but the system I was using, you could give priority. So if prod wanted the resources, prod got the resources. So if one of the prod machine dropped, it would kill one of the dev machine, which the developers didn't really like. Wouldn't have had the machine anyway. And then prod and a container E nodes start within 3 seconds. Data node, replication kicks in.
Yeah. That's an awesome use case. That's why I need to talk to you after this. All right. Okay.
So I'm new to MarkLogic. So
Okay.
How do you manage licenses with Docker containers? I mean, because we had to kill the containers and we have to spin up new containers every time, right? So do you have to do anything special for managing licenses?
So I think it's spelled out in the licensing agreement. I might not know the exact details. However, I know that it is really based on the host that you are using and based on that resource. Say that if you are running multiple containers in a 8-core machine, whether bare metal or VM, you do need to pay that 8-core. That's my information, and you can actually check with your account team more closely with that. Another use case that if you actually fend it off, that okay, I definitely need say 25% of that 8-core. I only use 2 vCPU or something like that. Somehow you have a clear separation. It's possible that you can pay less, but you can check with your account team more on that. Yeah.
Anyone else? Any others?
So pretty much whatever you showed in the demo, we've done in-house. We didn't know you guys doing the same. So
Yeah,
it's really great to know that we can now leverage your knowledge.
Okay.
Wondering, so the only problem that we have with in-house solution is when we create a storage for every single Docker, and then we set up high availability cluster with the
Oh,
forest
okay.
replication, and if one of the node dies,
Uh-huh.
we run into certain problems restoring that, the
Okay.
cluster in back to the normal state. Do you have any insights on that? Have you tested installation in a Docker environment with
Yeah.
high availability?
Yeah. I think we ran the regression test for the high availability, right, Vitaly? And
We are in progress.
yeah.
Is it in progress on Kubernetes or?
Both. Well,
On both.
Kubernetes we just starting to work on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just containers on Docker. We ran a full suite of regression tests, but in a sort of simplistic environment, not doing high availability.
But in general, would you recommend to use the shared file system in between all nodes, or dedicated value mounted to every?
It depends.
Depends.
Yeah.
So I don't
Okay,
know if it's the same
yeah.
question, but when the node comes back, it disappears and comes back, do you delete the old node and recreate a brand new node? Do you have support for that? Because everything I did was MarkLogic 8. So
Okay.
I actually got the seed from, I reverse engineered your
Okay.
config file, and then I would get the seed. The ID was the same, so when it came back, it just started.
Yeah,
replication.
it's the same place.
Emma,
yeah.
can you repeat just so that they understand for
Okay.
recording purposes what the point was made there?
Yeah. So
So I think the question
Yeah.
is whether your question is whether
If you have support for that now.
no, yeah. So whether there's any additional support in MarkLogic 9 to handle containers, container initialization, right? No.
That'd be nice.
Okay.
okay. That's
Noted.
good. Yeah. All right. Next question. All right.
Have you given any consideration to I don't know, other security systems like Kerberos or other production level security systems that would underlie an installation like this?
For containers,
Yeah, for containers. Yeah.
we're testing the secure Linux, and I think we will be probably testing different things in combination with it, but we haven't had a clear scheduled yet in our.
I mean, all
Yeah.
security features apply to container environment, right?
Right.
It's just like any other environment.
So
Of
it's
course,
the
there are some
extensive-
limitations and differences. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? We want to thank Emma and Vitaly
All right.
for presenting.
Thank you.